So we're going to jump into Unit 3 in math, and the topic of Unit 3 is going to be ratios and rates. For 3.1, lesson 3.1, which is the first lesson, we're going to talk specifically about ratios. So a lot of times you'll question, when is math going to be important? When am I going to use it in real life? And ratios is one of those situations where you can definitely apply your understanding in real life. So let's just take a look at this chart, just the left side first. So let's say you're making pancakes and there's a recipe for pancakes, right? So when you have a recipe, there's lots of ingredients. You could have flour in pancakes, eggs, milk, olive oil, salt. And there's a certain number of those ingredients that you need depending on how much you want to make, right? So if you want 6 pancakes, you need to follow the recipe and the amounts accordingly. But sometimes in recipes, you want a different amount than what they're giving you. And so let's say that you want to make 3 pancakes instead of 6. Well, 3 is half of 6, so you might just say, well, I'm just going to split them in half, instead of 100 grams of flour, I would just do half of that, which would be 50, easy. If there's 2 eggs for 6 pancakes, then half of that is easy. It's just 1 egg and 3 pancakes. And so that's pretty simple, but sometimes it's not simple, right? So let's say instead of, in this situation, you would just be doubling, right? So let's say you want to make 12 pancakes. It would just be twice as many as the ingredients here. But if you have a different number that's not as easy to work with, ratios is a concept that can help you understand how much to make when you're making a certain number of pancakes, for example. Let's talk real quick about what a ratio is, okay? So when we say ratio, a ratio is a comparison. A comparison of numbers. Okay, and so when we say comparison, we're generally going to need 2 different sets of numbers. And so we're comparing, so we need 2 different numbers. So how do we write ratios? So let's instead of pancakes, let's come up with a different example. Let's say that we have 3 red circles and 2 green circles. And then let's say that we want to write a ratio of red to green, right? A comparison of 2 numbers. And so the amount of red is obviously 3. And then the amount of the green is 2. And so when we talk about writing a ratio, there's a couple of ways we can do this. We could say that there are 3 to 2 circles, so 3 red to 2 green. We could also say 3 colon 2. Okay, so that means the same thing. 3 to 2 is the same as 3 colon 2. You could read it the same way, 3 to 2. And then the other way that you can write these is as a fraction. We could say 3, and then we put our fraction line, and we put 2 as the denominator. So each of these are 3 different ways to write ratios, which again is just a comparison of numbers. Let's say that we have some triangles. Let's say we have 4 yellow triangles, and let's say we have, 3 red blocks. So if the question is, what's the ratio of red squares to yellow triangles, whatever we say first, we have to write first. So if the question is, what is the ratio of these to these, I'm going to write this one first, okay? So it's 3 red squares to 4 yellow triangles, or 3 to 4, or 3 over 4. All of these are correct ways of writing a ratio, a comparison of 2 quantities. Then there's this concept of equivalent ratios. So let's say that I have a ratio that is 2/3. Again, I'm just choosing to write it that way. An equivalent ratio is asking for a ratio that is equal, meaning that the comparison of the two numbers is equal in a sense. So if I have, let's say I have 2 dogs and 3 cats. So my ratio of dogs to cats is 2/3. An equivalent ratio would be something that I can multiply these two numbers by with the same value to get a new ratio. And we would call those equivalent. So if I multiply 2 by 2, and then I do the same thing with my cats, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. So what this is saying is this ratio here is equivalent to that ratio, okay? Meaning the comparison of the two numbers is the same. And so the key here is, can you multiply by the same number? And in this case, I chose to multiply by 2, so I know this is equivalent, okay? And so you might get a question that asks, if I have 2/3 as a ratio, is that equivalent to 4/12? And so if that question is asking that, you can check by saying, well, to get from here to here, am I multiplying by the same number from here to here? So from 2 to 4 is times 2. From 3 to 12 is times 4. And so because these numbers are not the same, I would say this is not equivalent. Okay, so this ratio is not equivalent to this because the number I multiplied by is different. Okay, and so you can think back to that pancake, recipe. If you're making more pancakes and you don't multiply by the same number, then your ingredients are going to be off, and you're going to get a different flavored pancake. So when we start working with these problems for lesson 3.1, you're going to start off with a quick refresher on all of this stuff from the past. So dividing with decimals. If you need practice with that, remember, go to my YouTube and you can look at past videos to help you if you don't remember, or obviously I'm in the class to help as well. I got some exponent review here, and then some questions with GCF and LCM, so just some past practice. On these problems here with ratios, you're just going to write the ratio based on the quantities of those objects. 19 through 22 here asks you to describe a real-life relationship that can be represented by this ratio. So just think about something in real life where you would get, for every 1 of something, you would get 7 more of something else. Just try to think about what that could pertain to. Again, one of the examples from earlier is just like making pancakes, right? So maybe there's some ingredient where for every 2 of something, you need 5 of something else to get some type of food, So that would be like a real world example. So think about ratios in the real world. For 24 through 32 here, they're asking for ratios that are equivalent. So what you want to do is you want to see if these are equivalent to each other. So when you do that, figure out how you went from this number to this number. So it would be times 2. And see if you would also multiply the 3 to get to the 9 by multiplying by 2. And if you can't, then you would say they're not equivalent. Let's see. Those should all make sense, I think. So lots of word problems here. So essentially, just kind of to wrap up all of that. So So again, ratios are a comparison of two numbers. Okay, a comparison. We can write it three different ways. And then we can determine what equivalent ratios are by multiplying a ratio by the same number to find equivalent ratios. All right, so that was lesson 3.1.